As we've gone about the journey of tuning the science of this home, and we've dug deeper and deeper into science, one thing that kept lingering in the back of my head was the science of our land and how I could really attain that. But I didn't have the knowledge to back it up. And so I took a Mastermind course through Shades of Green called the Regenerative Backyard Blueprint, which is there to help you really understand what is happening scientifically in your property. What's happening with the water, what's happening with the plants, how to work together in harmony with them so that you're not killing yourself weeding every day. I needed this course because we have almost 3 acres of land, and I am the one who's in charge of the garden and the land. And this land in Atlanta, Georgia, if you let it be, it will consume you. My background in gardening is aspirational, to say the least. We lived in Chicago for many years, where I took over planting some of the pots by our condo, and then I had a little, what I called a coffin garden, because it felt like it was literally the size of a large tomb. But I really enjoyed the community there, and actually in that garden, somebody had introduced permaculture to me, which I had never heard of. And slowly through the years, I would watch YouTube videos, I'd maybe check out a book from the library. But as anybody who studies science, who studies engineering and understands systems, it's a lot when you dig into a systems approach to something. There is something that is so simple about it once you fully understand it. But until you really get that education into your back pocket, it feels very overwhelming. There are 7 modules, and in each of them, you're gonna learn a different facet that plays into a permaculture plan. So you start with just the climate context. It's literally observing the climate with which your property lives in. A garden in Georgia is gonna be entirely different from a garden in Idaho. After the first module of the climate context, you then go into planning. There's a lot of great information that helps you take your property's blueprint, which is literally the thing that you can pull down from Google Earth now, and scale it out and understand the measurements. Brandy so thoughtfully shows you how to use your own different landscape features to triangulate your property and your measurements and really expand it out. It's simple. It takes a little bit of thought and a little bit of drawing with a ruler, but once you get it going, you'll be great. In module 3, we consider the built environment. And the built environment is a fascinating one, because not only does that include literally the structures that are in your environment, but also the hardscape concepts that you might want to use. What natural hardscapes, like in Atlanta, we have a lot of rock. You might remember we found a giant rock under this house when we were building. The 4th module goes into managing water as a resource. And this was huge for us because we actually don't have any gutters on this home. And for a lot of homes, using your gutters to capture the water and then use that as irrigation makes a lot of sense. But for us, it doesn't make a lot of sense because A, we don't have gutters, but B, we have a lot of water. We have kind of the opposite thing of already having a stream, already having 3 watersheds come down onto our property. We're not in a flood zone, and yet we have this minor deluge of flooding that happens every single time we have a big rainstorm. So in this module, we actually looked at the water challenges on a property, how to capture the water not only for your gardens, but to bring the water back into the water table, because that's a huge problem that we have as we pave more and more land and are suffering from droughts. If we're not replenishing the water table, then ultimately our farmers are going to have a hard time, and we don't want that to happen. Module 5 is soil building strategies. And I loved this module because one of the things I hate to do is buy dirt. When we were building this property, we had to dig our water line, we had to dig out the foundation, and we found a lot of trash. Literally, we found a motorcycle buried in the ground. And I get nervous about that kind of stuff because it's industrial waste, and what is it leaching into the soil? So building healthy soil on top of the land that I have is going to be very important for my family if we're going to be eating off the land. And so keeping that in mind, this soil building strategy module just opened up so many different potentials and avenues to use my own land to make it better. That industrial waste concept is also an interesting thing that we saw immediately on the land, not only because we were digging into it, but because we brought out a herd of 37 goats onto our property to eat back the property. And now if you're familiar with goats, they'll eat anything, but if you give them so much land, they'll just be all lazy and take their time. So what the shepherds do when goats are brought onto your property to eat back the land is they will make a small enclosure, plop a bunch of goats in there, and then the goats feel like they have to race to get the food. And so that's how they'll move from one spot to the next. Well, interestingly for us, as they moved from one spot to the next, their behavior changed. There was literally one spot in our property where we ended up finding a lot of metal, and it kind of made the goats a little trippy. They got kind of high, is what the shepherds said. They went totally back to normal when they moved on to the next area, but that's something to think about in especially our country or really anywhere in the world now. In Module 6 in the Regenerative Backyard Blueprint, you get to go into the plant communities. You get to start considering which plants are gonna not only feed your family, for example, but also create the plant palette that you want. And I mean that from an artistic perspective. What colors are you interested in seeing? How much effort do you want to put into these plants? Will they come back each year? And can you start that from seed and collect those seeds? So all these plant communities were really interesting to think about because not only did we have edibles, which has always been a priority of mine, but there's also medicinals that I hadn't really thought of. And the medicinals lead right into the culinary approach of the herbs and spices that are fresh that you can bring in and liven up your food every day. The final module is putting it all together. And that is where you take that plan that you drew out from your Google Earth of your land, and then you take all the knowledge that you've gained from the course and you start to design your own plan. Well, and in the next video, I'm gonna show you what shades of green designed for me too, because we kind of went side by side in this project. I went through the Regenerative Backyard Blueprint as they also came out to my property and started taking their own observations and coming up with their own plans. So in the next video, you'll see how my plan and their plan lined up and didn't line up to create a plan to fix our land. Since this course is an online course, the student portal actually takes you to a whole course library where you not only have your backyard blueprint, but you also have virtual site visits, which I frankly found those very helpful. I'm a visual learner and I like to learn by example. So it was really wonderful to see shades of green in action, how they've gone into different properties and cultivated and created a plan. There's also the Regenerative Backyard Blueprint Community Forum. And the Zoom meetings were great because frankly, as I was learning things in the course, I had questions that didn't quite get fully answered or were just so personal to me and my plan that I really needed to have a one-on-one conversation and bounce ideas off of other students. This is one of those big aha moments that I had. You saw us doing the sheet mulching, which I thought I learned about correctly, but as you can see, I didn't. Easy to think you've done it right until you really know how to, and it took a group meeting for me to realize it. And from that community forum, I've even made a couple of friends who I think are gonna come and work on projects in the future. Stay tuned. Also in the student portal library, you have a planting guide. And the great thing about this is this helps you think about plants you've never thought of before. Frankly, I had only thought about pawpaws in the land of the Jungle Book, but that is one of those really cool edible plants that you can have in Georgia and one that kids love to eat, which is great because I've got 3 littles now. Overall, I really enjoyed that the Regenerative Backyard Blueprint was something I could have on my phone. It was something I could have on my laptop. I could be waiting at the car, waiting outside, wherever, and just kind of log in and watch and learn as I began to think about this large project that is our land. So stay tuned for the next video where Shades of Green is going to sit down with me and they're going to show me their plan that they have created, which I'm so excited to see. Comment, like, subscribe, tune in next time.